about mining and human rights violations. There is a wealth of data. It's a very central issue now, even more so in Andhra. I'm sure many of you are familiar now with the Reddy brothers, OMC. We have heard of the Madhu Kodas. But I think there are equally serious scams happening in the state itself, in the area of mining. I will just dwell upon one such area, which is the bauxite mining. It hasn't still started as yet, thank goodness, but it has generated a fair amount of debate and a very creative movement, principally in the Eastern Ghats area, even more so in V.S.Krishna district, because that is where all the bauxite reserves are placed. There's a bit of history. When Ajay said, I was just remembering, Chandrababu has suddenly turned pro-farmer. We all know how politicians have this very convenient amnesia. But whenever you speak of bauxite, it's necessary to remember this is not something that is happening after Rajshekhar Reddy came to power. The history of bauxite mining proposals goes back to 1999, when Chandrababu made this famous trip to Dubai, and there were reports in the papers which said the state government of AP had gone into this understanding with a mysterious, tantalizingly vague Dubai firm to mine bauxite in the agency 5th schedule areas of V.S.Krishna district. And we never knew, but now it emerges that it's the same MR person, Koneru, who's actually behind this Dubai firm. That's another story in itself, but we were all aghast. People who were even slightly familiar with constitutional statutes, protective legislation for Adivasis, 5th schedule area systems, were aghast. How can a private firm actually come and even think of mining bauxite when it is expressly forbidden in law? Chandrababu tried his worst to do it. There was a lot of opposition to it from political parties, from rights organizations, from Adivasi rights organizations. But he didn't backtrack. It's interesting to see he was hell-bent on somehow making it happen. He got some of his bureaucrats together to devise mechanisms to somehow amend land transfer regulation, which basically prohibits private players from going to the agency and mining. I think bureaucrats likes of Sri Lakshmi, B.P. Acharya, who also happens to be my senior in that university, JNU, they all sat together, put their intellect, but eventually told him that, sorry, it's difficult. 1 of 70 legislation, land transfer regulation, is not so easy to amend. Chandrababu did not stop there. That was the time of the NDA government. He went to Delhi and tried to get the basic structure of the 5th schedule altered. And there were people in the bureaucracy in Delhi who somehow tried to accommodate such a thing. Fortunately, it didn't happen. It's difficult. It cannot happen. It requires a constitutional amendment. And he lost the election soon after. 2004, Rajshekhar Reddy comes to power. It's interesting. One of the first things that the Rajshekhar Reddy government does is to learn from his predecessors' mistakes. Just like popular movements, struggles learn from their earlier mistakes and forge ahead, so does the establishment. So what does Rajshekhar Reddy do? When private players cannot go and mine in the agency, let's get a state instrument to go and mine in the agency. So memorandums of understanding, MOUs, are entered into with 2 firms principally. I'm talking about bauxite, please bear in mind. One is the Ras Al Khaimah. It's a small United Emirates country, and the special purpose vehicle says that it's the Anrak Alumina Company, and the other is Jindal, whom we are all familiar with, a Congress party politician, etc. And both these MOUs state that the private players will not go into the agency to mine bauxite, because he has learned from Chandrababu. How does he circumvent protective legislation, constitutionally mandated statutes? He gets the state instrument to actually go and mine. the MOU says that the APMDC, which is the state instrument, will go and mine bauxite in Visakhapatnam agency and hand it over to these corporates who will set up refineries out in the plain areas, so there is not much complication with the law, and then we will develop and then we will progress. And the tribals will stand to gain. Tribals will be devastated. It is a considered position that bauxite mining in the agency tracts is completely unviable. Whichever way you look at it, legal, sociological, social, environmental, livelihood, whichever way you look at it, it will devastate the lives of the tribals. And these tribals, these Adivasis in the Visakhapatnam region have already suffered, friends from Orissa would know, multiple displacement because of several projects in the erstwhile Koraput area. There are many of them like the Mannedora, Konda Kapu. Principally the Kones have migrated into Visakhapatnam area and they will face displacement if bauxite mining happens. The state's response to protest against bauxite mining is again very interesting. As you know, we have in place an environmental clearance regime post-Bhopal. Before Bhopal, as many of you know, there was nothing worthy in place. But once that terrible thing took place and 20,000 people died, India had this wonderful legislation actually called the Environment Protection Act of 1986, which mandates that you need environmental public hearings before any such projects are cleared. Now it's interesting that the public hearing for these refineries, I'm not talking about the bauxite mine areas in the agency, the public hearing for these refineries in the Visakhapatnam plain areas, how they take place. They're virtually conducted at the point of a gun. I was witness to both the public hearings, both for ANRAC and Jindal. I'm a member of the Human Rights Forum. We were campaigning against this whole bauxite process. And on the day of the public hearing in Makavaripalam for ANRAC, I was stopped along with several activists from actually proceeding to the venue of the public hearing. We managed to reach the place and there were about 2,000 policemen, including 2 truckloads of greyhounds policemen. This is the typical invoking of the Maoist bogey. All of it was intended to somehow bulldoze the public hearing process. They know fully well, even if there is 100% opposition at the public hearing, they still go ahead and obtain these clearances. That is what the EIA notification says. That is the present position. But even then, they want to bulldoze these occasions. There were no greyhounds at the Jindal thing. It's also interesting, state response, it's interesting why the government was hell-bent on somehow fast-tracking all clearances for ANRAC. ANRAC, if one goes through a little bit into who actually are the players in ANRAC, it consists of Penna Cements, Pratap Reddy, very close to the Rajshekhar Reddy family, very closely enmeshed in the ruling political establishment, which is why the SP was actually sitting there behind at the public hearing. And the chief minister, I'm not exaggerating, the chief minister was constantly on the phone with him saying, what's going on? Is the public hearing not over? Get it over quickly. Of course, all of us protested. There was almost 100% protest over there. The Joint Collective quickly boomed up the proceedings. ANRAC managed to get environmental clearances. Subsequently, the MOEF gave it stage 1 forest clearance. What is interesting, some of you may have seen this news item in the newspaper, I think 3 days ago, when Mr. Jairam Ramesh, our ex-Minister of Environment and Forest, and Mr. Kishore Chandrababu, the Tribal Welfare Minister, both of them said in a meeting at Chintapalli that bauxite mining will not take place as long as we are ministers. And bauxite mining is a terrible thing for the Adivasis. Quite true. It's a terrible thing for the Adivasis. Some of you, I'm sure, from Orissa certainly will know that the Vedanta company which was seeking to mine bauxite in the Niyamgari forest area, their forest clearance was cancelled on the basis of the recommendations of the Saxena report, and the MOEF went and cancelled the forest clearance. The reason for cancelling the forest clearance was very simple. MOEF said, after accepting the recommendations of the Saxena report, that Vedanta had not complied with statutory obligations. It had violated many acts, Environment Protection Act, Forest Conservation Act, most importantly PESA of 1996, and even more recently the much touted Forest Rights Act of 2006. They had not respected any of these stipulations, so the forest clearance is cancelled. Now the pertinent question to be asking is, it's a very good principle to be cancelling it, but can you apply that selectively? By the same yardstick, all clearances for bauxite mining in Visakhapatnam district in Andhra and neighboring East Godavari, it hasn't started yet, have to be cancelled. It's as simple as that. It's very nice to see Rahul Gandhi go and get into photo ops with the Dongaria cones in Niyamgarh. It makes for very good populist politics. But what is going on the ground? His very Congress people are deeply involved in the whole bauxite process in Visakhapatnam. You have Jairam Ramesh and sundry other politicians, the Tribal Welfare Minister of AP, for example, indulge in plain doublespeak. But the clearances are all still in place. They're not cancelled. What we are asking for is that this cannot happen. This is a mockery of the Constitution, nothing less. The Forest Rights Act, the PESA, Forest Conservation Act, one of 70, they all didn't come about because Madam Sonia Gandhi or Manmohan Singh or the World Bank thought they were a good thing for the tribals. No. Behind them is a history we all know of struggle, of great sacrifice, blood, sweat, toil and tears of the Adivasis who fought, and people who fought along with them, who continue to fight and stay on the ground, and you abuse them. It's interesting, I want to bring in a parallel here. I don't have much time actually, but you all remember Green Hunt, and Mr. Chidambaram was asked during the initial days of the Green Hunt, but why are you pumping so many people into the forest tracts of Dandakaran? And he said, he's very interesting, he's a very soft guy, Harvard educated, very smooth talker. He said, it's to re-establish the rule of law. What is the establishment's track record with the rule of law, principles of natural justice? Is there any single project, developmental project, in the 5th schedule area, or for that matter in the northeast, in the 6th schedule areas, they have adhered to the rule of law? Is there a single developmental project where they have respected protective legislation for Adivasis? No. They've abused it systematically, and I think this whole debate about security development in 5th schedule areas, it has little to do with these terms of progress and development. I think at stake, are very fundamental issues of entire right of the Adivasi communities, of the forest dwellers, to a way of life. Their right to protect and nourish their natural resources, their traditional knowledge systems, their production systems, their mountain streams, their forest, their natural wealth, their mineral wealth. I think at stake is that their right to a way of life with dignity, justice, sustenance and freedom. I will just give if allowed, one small example which has actually kicked up a lot of enthusiasm in activists like in the Visakhapatnam agency again. This was a case of mining for a mineral called China clay. This is again in Dumbrigoda Mandal, not on an extent as big as the bauxite mining thing, small area, about 35 acres. China clay, as you all know, is used for paper, glistening element in papers because of that. It's a very precious metal. And it's a very typical way they go about it. They float a company, I mean non-tribal interests, corporate interests. They float a company called Muchika Bhudevi. Muchika Bhudevi is actually a tribal woman residing in Polavaram. Poor woman doesn't know what is going on in her name. This company is floated. And then they try to have a public hearing. But the Adivasis realize it after a point of time. And this realization did not come about spontaneously. It's important to remember that realization came about their rights, about PESA, about the necessity to consult and take their consent on these matters. It came about because of conscious political intervention. Political intervention by parties like the BSP, rights activists, Adivasi rights activists in the area, teachers, the CPM, CPI and the Maoists, who are quite peripheral now, but who have been quite a force to reckon with till the very recent past in that area. And after that, some of you may have seen these clippings on television. When the MLA came and the local MPP came, they almost beat them up. The woman almost lynched them. They were so angry because they had gotten to understand this notion that any such process cannot take place without their consent, without the consent of the Adivasis themselves. I will end here. Thank you.